It's quite common, particularly when you're working collaboratively, for you to be waiting on additional footage items, and in particular, animations, any kind of motion graphics work. And it's quite common for motion graphics artists to give even very, very basic, rough, sketched wireframe outlines of content to begin with, because they're going to know the timing very, very precisely early on. It's part of the motion graphics workflow to have very precise information about timing, and you need to know that timing for your edited work. Now, let's say you're waiting on that kind of content, and you know that you're going to have some kind of clip turn up that's going to be, say, 3 seconds long. Well, let's say I'm going to put this in as a cutaway over this interview, and I just need something there to let me know where it's going to be. So one quick way of dealing with this is to just create a new title, or anything for that matter. You can use anything you want, but I'm going to make a title. And I'm going to call this title Embedded Visual, just something as a reference, okay? And then I'll put some text into this, and I'll say this is Embedded Visual, and then maybe a little note saying effects of Carmen over background video, okay? And while I'm there, let's just add a little rectangle so we really know this is going to take over the screen. Something like that's okay. And I'll just be fancy and drop the opacity a bit on this. Right-click, arrange, send backwards. So I've got the text as well. And maybe I'll give that a fill that is a little bit of a shade. So there we are. Something a little bit soft. So I know that there's something on screen. So I'm going to close the title tool. And there's my embedded visual. And let's make a bin for this called holding clips. In fact, let's just call it placeholder clips. Okay. And let's put that in there. Okay, good. So I'm going to take this embedded visual and I'm going to lay it on the timeline. And I'm going to use that as my reference. So I can watch the video, and when this cuts in, I know, okay, at this point, I'm going to have some additional content.
The video together, the story was all there, everything.
Okay, fine. Now, of course, the duration isn't set. So if I zoom in a little bit and do a dual roller trim, I get a little tooltip that tells me my duration. And let's say I'll pull this down to 3 seconds. Good. So I've now got a placeholder that I can use as a visual reference, as a visual cue in building my sequence and on screen, so I know exactly what's happening. Now, of course, time passes and my motion graphics creative sends me over the updated version of the file. Remember, here in Premiere Pro, I'm actually using a title which is embedded inside my Premiere Pro project rather than being linked to a file on my storage drive. But that doesn't matter because the replace footage command in Premiere Pro still works with titles. So I'm going to right-click and I'm going to choose replace footage. And I'm going to browse. I'm going to do this fairly randomly. You're going to, of course, do this with something a bit more meaningful. But let's choose the music video as an example. And I'm going to take this music video clip and click select. And right away, you can see the file name has updated in the bin. So be a little bit careful because you're going to lose the clip name that you had. It's been updated on the timeline. And of course, what I'm getting is the original starting point of the clip. There's that little triangle to tell me that I'm at the beginning of the clip. No triangle on the right because, of course, I've got lots more content available. If I just scroll up a bit so you can see I haven't got any audio from this clip because, of course, my placeholder clip had no audio on the timeline. So why would it be added now? It's hard to describe. I suppose that Premiere Pro treats these clip segments on the timeline almost like cookie cutters, and you're seeing through those windows into your clip content. Of course, there's nothing to stop me going to my slip trim and just pulling out the content. And now I've got the main visuals of the music video. Let me go back to my selection tool. V for Victor takes you back to that tool. Now, of course, in this case, I'm working with content that has no transparency. It really is effectively a cutaway. I'll just zoom out a little bit. And it's a cutaway on top of this interview with the director. But you might be working with complex layered graphics, motion graphics with alpha and transparency that's showing you something through in the background. It doesn't really matter what format it is. It doesn't really matter what resolution. Premiere Pro will conform at the point of playback. So whatever you happen to have there, it's going to display correctly. I commonly use placeholder clips in this way for pretty much anything I intend to place later on. Perhaps not so much for strap lines, lower thirds with people's names on them, I tend to do later on. But for example, if I'm working at the start of the sequence and I want to have something to show that there's going to be perhaps an animated graphic element there, I might well put a placeholder clip in just so that I know that it's another piece of work I need to do. The only thing you really need to be sure about is duration. You can worry about the image resolution later on, but you need to make sure that your motion graphics artists are giving you the correct duration for the finished piece, because of course that's going to set the timing for your sequence.